Hello all, James here. I'm reporting the sad news today in this video of the death of Robert Lawrence Horne, better known as Bobby Horne AKA Sir Mo, of the tag team Men on a Mission with King Mable. Well, he was Mable for most of it, actually, not King Mable, and rapping manager Oscar. He died at the age of 58 due to complications stemming from severe blood infection and pneumonia. He'd been in the ICU a number of weeks prior to his passing. And Sir Mo is sort of the culmination, I guess, of several years' worth of just terrible health problems, including he had to go for a kidney transplant in 2018, and he later battled COVID-19 and complications from that in 2022. So we're going to go straight to Leilani Kai. She posted this all the way back in October 9th. She talks about some memories with Sir Mo, who I'm going to be referring to as Sir Mo throughout this, is how he's best known by. But also says he's going through a really tough time right now, battling a blood infection, pneumonia, remains in the ICU. His wife, Denise, has been by his side every step of the way and has been sharing updates as he continues to fight and shows small signs of improvement. Now, on October 12th, I don't have the post here, but I'm going to just quote it for you. This is from Denise, Bobby's wife. It's been touch and go since Tuesday. The doctors discovered pneumonia and septic shock. Bobby had to be intubated on Wednesday and placed on multiple blood pressure medicines. Several times we were told he might not make it, but every time he's proved them wrong. We're going to be talking about the actual announcement of his passing at the end, but I thought I'd give you a sort of rundown of Sir Mo's career. He began his pro wrestling career in 1991, but his first national exposure, which I don't know how many people know this, is actually on April 29th. It's when it was filmed anyway, and then broadcast a little later, 1992, when Sir Mo did a couple of jobs for WWF television on Superstars on the syndicated show, The Murder Hour, as Stevie calls it, to the Beverly Brothers and the Mountie. Now, early on, he teamed with Nelson Frazier Jr., later known as Mable, of course, and they became the Harlem Knights, with Horne wrestling under the ring name of Bobby Knight. Now, they tagged in North Carolina for like a couple of months, and, you know, around West Virginia, that kind of way, and then they headed over to the USWA, Jerry Jarrett, Jerry Lawler, all that kind of thing, for a couple of months. It really was quite a short amount of time, these two guys tagging up together, before the WWF came a-calling, and they jumped over, started recording shows in 1993, May in 1993, I believe, on the syndicated shows. So they'd only been a team, I think, for, 4 months, 5 months, something like that. Now, this is the time when USWA and the World Wrestling Federation, the WWF and Vince McMahon, were working hand in glove around this time. They were giving, I don't know if the WWF were paying, but basically migrating some of their stars over to Memphis at the time, like Papa Shango, Coco Beware, and even eventually the Hart brothers, Bret Hart and Owen Hart, would do some work in USWA, as well as Vince McMahon cutting promos as well in the first instance of the evil Mr. McMahon persona several years before the Montreal situation. Anyway, back to Bobby Horne, of course. Now, in 1993, once again, he signed with the WWF, and they were repackaged as a very, very like positive babyface rap group kind of tag team, with Bobby becoming Mo, Frazier becoming Mable, and then they had the rapping manager Oscar as well. The team was dubbed Men on the Mission, or MOM. And I want to say positive rap group. This was of the era of Lethal Injection and The Chronic, but they were sort of more in the mold of like Fresh Prince and DJ Jazzy Jeff kind of thing. But so they were, you know, totally on the family-friendly image, not like The Gangsters a year later, you know, in Smoky Mountain, later ECW. Once again, I remember their song being... it's the only rap song I've ever heard where it has more snare than bass. It was the weirdest song, but it got the fans going, and they were a fairly popular tag team in the 93, 94, early 95 era, before the heel turn, of course. Now, they actually captured the World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Championships during a UK tour, March 20... I don't know if it's March 29th, I didn't actually write. I just wrote March 1994, before the titles were reclaimed shortly thereafter, once again by the Quebecers, who they defeated. Now, there's been a rumour going around for decades that tag title switch was never meant to happen. There was some kind of accident that happened, and somebody forgot to kick out, or Mable was leaning on them too hard, or whatever it was. I'm not sure about that. In fact, I'm actually quite sure that's not true, because I interviewed PCO, who was Quebecer Pierre at the time, and I asked him, was this an accident? Were you meant to lose the titles? And he said, yes, we were, because they wanted to give the fans in London specifically, where they lost the titles. It was around this time where Vince McMahon was saying on commentary, anything can happen in the WWF. And we kind of figured that with the UK and European market propping up World Wrestling Federation business in the mid-90s, from 93 to 96 practically, they would have been even way further in debt if they hadn't sort of gone to Europe so many times with all those tours. This was kind of a way of giving back, I figure. And the Quebecers would win the tag titles back 2 days later in Sheffield, all part of the same UK tour, of course. Basically, once again, to keep interest in the European markets, we figured. But that also doesn't negate the fact that Sir Mo was actually a former WWF Tag Team Champion, and the WWF didn't ignore the title changes, which was kind of their modus operandi for years prior. Also including, and I believe Jacques Rougeau says this, that he and Ray, when they were the Fabulous Rougeaus, actually did win the tag titles, maybe from the Hart Foundation, on a house show, and then the WWF just completely ignored it. So it wasn't out of their remit to do something on a house show like WCW would do constantly, and then ignore it on television. They actually mentioned the tag title switch, and it was canon, as they say. In April 1995, Sir Mo and Mable turned into heels. They turned to the dark side. They became villains, and they attacked the rapping manager Oscar and the Smoking Guns as well. And later on, after that, Sir Mo kind of like drifted back, not back into, but becoming a manager. He sort of became only a part-time wrestler, really, at that point. So Mable would win the King of the Ring 1995. It's an all-time turkey of a King of the Ring tournament. But Sir Mo would become more of a manager, at least on television. He would wrestle occasionally on television, but he'd wrestle mostly on house shows as a tag team with Mable. Now, unfortunately for Sir Mo, this was also the era where King Mable started hurting people, as in everybody he wrestled practically, from the Samoans to Henry Godwinn to, most famously, The Undertaker. Now, Mable was actually sort of, I don't know if he was fired or just sent away for a bit, but after Survivor Series, I think he wrestled one more televised match after Survivor Series 95. But then he was sent to Puerto Rico, and then he was brought back for the next pay-per-view, the December In Your House, I believe, so that probably would have been 5 or 6, to do and then also like the following Raw to do a couple of high-profile losses to The Undertaker and Diesel, and then he was gone again for about a month, sent back to Puerto Rico, and then he comes back again. And this does include Sir Mo as well. Then Mable comes back for the WWF Royal Rumble 1996 match, and the reason he was brought back, because they were pretty much done with him at that point, as well as Sir Mo, and once again we'll get to Sir Mo in a second, is that the 96 Royal Rumble had such a dearth of stars going in it that they ended up like having people like Doug Gilbert be part of it, to obviously complete silence because nobody knew who he was. They tried to get the Ultimate Warrior to sign and appear at the Royal Rumble. It didn't work out. He'd appear at WrestleMania 12. Tried to get Sabu to turn up to that Royal Rumble, and they couldn't sign on the dotted line for whatever reason. I can't remember the full story. It's not about Sabu, this video, anyway. So anyway, they brought back Mable for one more appearance, as well as Sir Mo as his manager, and then after that, they were both cut. Sir Mo would actually not be cut from the WWF, but his bookings went right down, and he did a few losses, a few jobs on house shows, including Marty Jannetty and The Undertaker as well. So basically, they were trying to get all the mileage out of Sir Mo as they could before they got rid of them both, unfortunately. Now, Sir Mo, this is a real deep dive fact for you. He did make one more WWF appearance in 1997, I believe September of 1997, under the name of Buzz. Don't even know who he wrestled, but it was one house show, not even on a shotgun or anything, that he wrestled, but he wasn't picked up again. After his release in 1996, he ends up going back to USWA, starts teaming with Mable again. I think he becomes Sir Muhammad at that point, and he remains with the USWA until early 1997. A few months afterwards, USWA would be sold, and that's its own story for its own video. Of course, if anyone knows the name Larry Burton or Bertrand or whatever name he was going under that week, and the various legal issues that go with selling that territory. Now, Sir Mo would continue sort of in the Memphis area, including, like Power Pro Wrestling and then Memphis Wrestling afterwards, the sort of spiritual successors to USWA, I guess. He would also continue working on smaller promotions in the indies for up until the 2020s, actually. I think his last match that we know of is 2020, but he could well have been wrestling beyond that, because obviously these records are not, comprehensive, I guess, for the indies especially. But once again, he wrestled the indies for years. Later worked as a promoter. He was co-running the SAW, I believe you probably pronounce it, Championship Wrestling in Dallas with his wife, Denise Jones. And I believe that now that he's passed away, that I think she's probably the sole owner, I guess. Health-wise, Sir Mo underwent a kidney transplant. He faced liver issues, and he was reportedly hospitalised with a blood infection and pneumonia as well in 2022, the same year he had COVID. Horne passed away October 19, 2025, at the age of 58. Once again, from complications arising from the blood infection and pneumonia and whatnot. This news was broken by Book Pro Wrestlers Facebook page. Here we go. It's with great sadness that we share the news that Bobby Horne, known to wrestling fans around the world as Sir Mo of Men on the Mission, has passed away. He was born April 13th, 67, and we'll just go through to some of the more personal stories that Steve Stasiak has written here. As the years went on, Bobby continued to contribute to wrestling both in and out of the ring. He trained, he helped at events, giving back to the business, etc. Beyond the bright outfits and booming entrances, those who knew Bobby personally described him as a kind, humble, and deeply devoted man. Someone who loved his peers, appreciated his fans, and never took a moment of it for granted. So that is the video. That is the unfortunate news of the passing of Sir Mo of Men on a Mission at the age of 58.